A little city car for people who have more to do with their money than, well, to buy cars. Citroen's smarter C1 aims not only to be funky and fun, but also an economical choice in almost every respect. It's been substantially improved in recent times with a sleeker look and extra equipment, but its major draw remains affordability. Not only when it comes to purchase price, but also in frugal running costs, still unbeaten by more recently introduced contenders in this class. We live in a world where there are many different opinions on what the shape of environmentally friendly motoring should be. Some say it lies in expensive hybrid or electric technology. Others that it'll only be sold by even pricier hydrogen cell fuel power. Diesels too have a huge following, with supporters pointing to the low CO2 and high fuel returns emanating from the latest generation of common rail units. But perhaps we've all been thinking a bit too deeply about this. Perhaps the green future of city motoring really lies behind a much simpler solution. Something like this Citroen C1, which, like its Peugeot and Toyota stablemates, has lately been much improved with a smarter look and lower running costs in the face of tough new city car competition. The C1 isn't hybrid or hydrogen powered, and there isn't even the option of a diesel engine. Yet despite all of that, getting on for a decade after its original launch and with over 620,000 global sales on the clock, it still manages to be one of the most frugal and eco-conscious petrol city car choices on UK roads today. How has Citroen done it? Let's find out. All versions of this design use the same 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol engine, the configuration of choice in city cars these days. Get in, turn the key, and the 998cc motor sounds pleasingly characterful. It's billed as the world's lightest production engine, which is one reason why this car, with a total weight of no more than about 800 kilograms, is so affordable to run. As Lotus founder Colin Chapman used to say, more power makes you quicker down the straights. Less weight makes you quicker everywhere. And so it is with this Citroen. The zippiness it delivers around town at odds with its modest power and the 12.3 second 0 to 60 time. You don't have to row the thing along with a gear lever either, with peak power being delivered from way down in the rev range. This, in other words, is a power plant that backs up its perky soundtrack with a perky power delivery, perfectly suiting this C1's feisty up-and-atom personality. Talking of the gear change, the manual 5-speeder isn't bad, with a long throw from the long stick but a positive feel. But an option that many townies will like will be the EGS semi-automatic system, though it will hit your running cost returns and adds about a second to the 0 to 60 time. Actually, this isn't a conventional full automatic, being a more sort of manual gearbox without a clutch. It's actually got an electronic gear change actuator on, and like many of these systems, you can help the smoothness by lifting off a little as you change through the gears. Or you can simply use the gear change paddles that are mounted on the steering column. That's a trendy touch, but overall with this model there's a refreshing lack of the kind of gimmickry and nonsense that can plague some small cars as manufacturers look to differentiate their wares. With this city car, you simply get one that's small, manoeuvrable, easy to see out of, and very simple to operate. It's almost comical how little car there is behind the rear seats, and it's worth remembering if you're manoeuvring into a tight space, if you're backing in, that you can afford to leave yourself some breathing room. When you are parking in restricted areas like that, the light power steering makes wheel twirling simple, and the tight turning circle means that if you're driving along and you suddenly see a space available on the opposite side of the road, then a quick U-turn is easy enough to snaffle it. Citroen has tweaked the rear shock absorbers in this latest C1 in a bid to reduce body roll, which means that the car is slightly more inconvenienced than it was originally by town-based larger potholes or poorly profiled speed humps. Mind you, it still doesn't do too badly for a little runabout with a wheelbase of just 2.34 metres, thanks to the fact that there's plenty of give in the front strut suspension, and the generous tyre walls play their part in ironing out minor imperfections. The stiffer shock absorbers should help when it comes to the twisty stuff, and sure enough, this car can reward more enthusiastic drivers. It still runs out of grip fairly quickly though, and would-be rally drivers will find plenty of body movement on tighter bends. And on the highway, well, actually the C1 is one of those city tots you maybe wouldn't mind taking on a longer journey. It's certainly able to keep up with the cut and thrust of major road driving, though you may need the odd gear down change when you're going uphill. Top speed is pegged at 98 miles an hour, so motorway speed shouldn't be a problem. Small where it matters, big where it counts. That's the idea here. And at just 3.44 metres long, this car is certainly small. Still the most compact model in Citroen's range, whether you order it with 3 or 5 doors. And it has a neater, more modern look these days, thanks to a smarter front end. Now here the headlamps keep their rounded shape, but the bumper has been completely redesigned to house the fog lamps and daytime running lights you'll find on plusher versions like this one. Apart from the brand's smarter looking badge work, there's little change at the rear, where, as before, an opening glass panel replaces a conventional rear hatch. Now, the disadvantage of this is that there's quite a high lip over which you've got to lift your shopping. Volkswagen, Seat and Skoda city cars suffer from the same thing for the same reason. Once you do get the stuff inside, there's 139 litres up to the parcel shelf, 199 litres up to the top of the rear seats. That's a bit less than you'll find in some rivals, but given that most city cars don't use the rear bench very often, that's not going to be too much of a problem for most owners, who will be able to push forward the split folding rear seats. They're split folding and all but the entry level model, to free up as much as 751 litres of total fresh air. Now that's in the 5-door variant that I've got here. You get 712 litres with the seats folded if you've got the 3-door model. But how much room will there be for people? Now, we're used to space-efficient city car designs these days, but back in 2005, when this car was first launched, it really was astonishing just how much space the designers had fitted into something so small. I mean, this car is shorter than a Mini, yet 2 fully sized adults can sit reasonably comfortably here on the back seat, as long as they're not too long-legged. Though they might complain about the lack of wind-down windows. You only get these pop-out panels. I might even think of putting 3 kids on the rear bench here, were it not for the fact that there are only 2 sets of seat belts. You can't have a 3rd middle belt, even on the options list. And at the wheel, well, the cabin has been left pretty much untouched by the latest round of revisions, but that's not too much of a problem. In the interior, with the big glass area that makes it seem roomier than it is, you get a steering wheel that adjusts for rake but not for reach with the instrument binnacle. You also get plenty of elbow room and enough fore and aft adjustment on the seat for the portliest of people. It's practical too. Though you don't get a glove box, you do get a deep storage bin in front of the front seat passenger, as well as a plethora of storage compartments on the dashboard, the centre console and the door panels. Plus there's plenty of space for drinks, with 2 cup holders ahead of the gear stick, even room for a bottle behind the handbrake, and space for up to 3 more cans and a recess between the door and the seat. You also get nice touches like this intriguing translucent panel for the heating and the ventilation. Prices range between £8,000 and £11,000, so this C1 slots in just below the starting point for Citroen's larger C3 Super Mini range. Now, unlike the rival Peugeot 107 version of this city car, you can order the 5-door body style with entry-level trim. And that's quite important because it makes purchase of this Citroen easily the cheapest way to get into the 5-door version of this design. And 5 doors, of course, is the body style that most buyers in this segment want. If you are agonising between 3 and 5 doors, then you'll need to know that there's a £350 premium to go from one to the other. And there's a £500 premium if you want the semi-automatic EGS transmission rather than the standard 5-speed manual gearbox. So how do those sorts of figures stack up against obvious rivals in the city car sector? Well, let's start with this model's near identical design stablemates, Peugeot's 107 and Toyota's Aygo. Like this Citroen, those two cars come only with a 1-litre petrol engine, the choice of 3 or 5 doors, and the selection between manual or semi-automatic transmission. The Peugeot is priced near identically to this C1, but the Toyota will probably cost you around £500 more in most model-for-model comparisons. The only other rival 4-seat design in this segment that, like this one, limits you to 1-litre petrol power is that you'll find badged as either the Suzuki Alto or the Nissan Pixo. Now, both of these Indian-built models enjoy a price advantage over this car of up to £1,000 in the case of the Suzuki, but you really do pay for that saving with a cheap feel and a basic design. Which is why most potential city car customers for this C1 who aren't considering its Peugeot or Toyota stablemates will probably be looking at something that's still affordable but slightly more sophisticated. And that something will most likely be the design at the moment in city car land, the one that you'll find variously badged as either the Volkswagen Up, the Skoda Citigo or the Seat Me. Now, of these, the Seat and the Skoda are slightly cheaper, but you'll find the Volkswagen priced very comparably to this C1. What other recently introduced city car alternatives might you be considering? Kia's Picanto, perhaps, priced similarly against this Citroen in 1-litre form, but maybe lacking a bit of its character. Or maybe Fiat's 3rd generation Panda. It looks good value against a C1 if you're looking at 5-door variants, but it does have 2 key disadvantages. First, you can only have the Fiat with 5 doors, and secondly, perhaps more importantly, the entry-level version of the Panda comes only with an older and relatively dirty 1.2-litre petrol engine, which can't match the running costs of this Citroen. And sharing that same set of problems is Hyundai's i10. It too only comes with 5 doors, and it too is only available in its cheapest form with a 1.2-litre engine that can't match this C1 on the balance sheet. Other city car options, to be honest, can be even less appealing. They're either pricier, dirtier, and limit you only to 5 doors. Step forward the Vauxhall Aguila, the Suzuki Splash and the Chrysler Ypsilon. Or pretending to be fashionable and funky, they even pricier still and limit you only to 3 doors. And here I'm thinking of cars like the Ford Ka, the Smart 42, the Renault Twingo, the Mini First and entry-level versions of the Fiat 500. And of these, I should point out that only the impractical 2-seater Smart can match this Citroen's running cost returns. So let's say that you've done your homework, you've weighed up all the options, and you've decided that a C1 is indeed what you want. What can you expect for your money? Well, it's a bit disappointing to find that basics like side rubbing strips, a rev counter and 50-50 split folding rear seats aren't included on the entry-level version, though of course you do get them on plusher variants like this one. But laudably, a full-size spare wheel is fitted across the range. All variants though do get speed-related electrically assisted power steering, a 12-volt interior socket, a rear wash and wipe, and a decent quality CD stereo with an audio input socket. Plusher C1 models like this get a more powerful CD audio with what Citroen calls a connecting box, able to read all kinds of MP3 formats, Bluetooth connect in your mobile phone, and offer USB and various audio jack hoop-ups via a socket at the base of the centre console. Safety-wise, it's a pity that the entry-level variant doesn't get ISOFIX child seat fastenings, but other versions further up the range do. And all C1 models get twin front airbags, with the option on plusher versions of side bags that can even protect rear seat occupants, plus ABS brakes with EBFD electronic brake force distribution to make them more effective, and CSC cornering stability control for the twisty stuff. You don't get normal stability control as part of the standard spec, but it is optional across the range, and it comes as part of a popular Plus pack, which also throws in things like the connecting box, more powerful 4-speaker stereo, a chromed front grille, daytime running lights, electric windows, and remote control central locking. This C1 is the first petrol-powered Citroen to edge beneath the all-important 100 grams per kilometre of CO2 figure. It's 99 grams per kilometre return, making it exempt from the London congestion charge. All variants get free road tax for the first year, and as for fuel consumption, well, if you thought the original version of this car was frugal, then check out this model. Combined cycle returns have edged up from 61.4 miles per gallon to 65.7 mpg. Supposedly newer city car rivals from Volkswagen, Seat and Skoda trumpet low running costs loudly, but actually you have to pay considerably more for an eco version of one of those if you're going to match this Citroen's running cost returns. One word of warning though, choose a C1 equipped with the EGS semi-automatic transmission, and CO2 emissions are pitched at 104 grams per kilometre, which won't net you quite the same kinds of savings and won't see you free of the congestion charge. Likewise, combined cycle fuel economy drops by about 3 miles per gallon over that of the manual car. Mind you, that's still a much better showing than you get of full automatics in rival city car models like Suzuki's Alto or Nissan's Pixo. Residual values may not be quite as strong as those commanded by, say, a Volkswagen Up, but once you've had a chat with your friendly Citroen dealer, you'll probably find that you'll be paying quite a lot less for a C1, which will sort that out anyway. Insurance is a Group 3 on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, which again is not quite as low as with some rivals, but not by enough to be significant. It still means that this C1 is a great choice for newly qualified drivers or younger people looking for their first car. It also helps that accident damage is quick and easy to fix thanks to body panels that just pop off. And though it would be nice to see a warranty of longer than 3 years, even when it does run out, you'll find that parts are relatively inexpensive, helped by the fact that you can source them from either a Peugeot, a Citroen or a Toyota dealer outlet. Citroen has always been rather good at small, efficient little cars. The 2CV goes back to the 40s, while more recent tiny runabouts like the Saxo and the first generation C3 still have loyal owners. People who are going to take very easily to today's modern interpretation of Citroen city car chic, this C1. Small where it matters and big where it counts. This, you see, is a runabout perfectly adapted to economical life on the urban street. Tight spaces, no problem. Tricky manoeuvres, easy. And life with your bank balance. Low rate finance, of course. Around 70 to the gallon. Just watch the savings rack up. And the 99 grams per kilometre of CO2 return means not only that Friends of the Earth will thank you, but that you'll get free road tax for the first year of ownership, and you'll miss out on inner city congestion charging. Add in Citroen's affordable offers, and the list of things not to like is pretty small. Upon it, you'd probably note that more recently introduced city car rivals can boast more space and a smarter feel. But they can't better this Citroen when it comes to the sheer affordability of every aspect of the ownership experience. And given that this design dates back, well, all the way to 2005, that's quite some achievement. A mechanically similar Peugeot 107 or Toyota Aygo would deliver the same thing, of course. But with those two, the 5-door version of this design, the one I think you should buy, will cost you more in its most affordable form. All of which means that if you agree the price to be right, then you'll probably find the car to be so too. Leaving you to get on with spending your money on more important things.